used to have this friend when I was growing up, and I loved hanging out with him. He was a bit of a scruffy kid, and he could be fairly annoying, but we used to play together all the time, and I really enjoyed hanging out with him. As we grew older, we both sort of went our separate ways, and I kind of forgot about him for a while, but in the back of my mind, the memories of him still floated about. I still thought fondly of him. And a couple of weeks ago, I met him again, completely out of the blue, and when we initially got back together, it was just like old times, and those things that really annoyed me about him, they seemed amplified. Like, I could forgive them a bit more when I was a kid, because I didn't really know any better, but now he was just being a dick for no real reason. It got to the point where I basically just had to cut him off. I couldn't deal with him anymore. And that kid's name, ladies and gentlemen, was Booty. And it wasn't a kid, it was a game. That was metaphorical storytelling. I reeled you in like a fish, and the fishing rod turned out to be my writing skills, and the fish was your mind. This is top-level games writing stuff.
Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum.
But anyway, swiggity swooty, I'm saddened by this Booty. It was a game that I loved back in the day, but oh man, I feel guilty for even saying it, but it just doesn't... It won't let me enjoy it. That's the problem I have with the game. I love the idea behind it. I love the gameplay for the most part. I love the basic as balls graphics, but it begs me to hate it the entire time I'm playing it. And I don't hate it per se. I don't think this is one of the worst games ever made in the history of gameplay. It's a game that's simply marred by its own mechanics. I was originally going to review the game a few months ago, but when I first started playing it, I couldn't shake the feeling that I just wasn't getting it. Maybe it just wasn't the kind of game I wanted to play right then, so I left it and I moved on to something else. Then a month after that I tried again, but no, it wasn't like it had been when I was a kid. The game just didn't feel right, so again I reviewed something else. Truth is, my nostalgia for this game is so high, I couldn't even listen to my own negativity about the game without feeling guilty about it. But then along comes a new Patreon, and I ask him what game he'd like me to review. Booty, he says. Oh, lovely. Now I have to face it head on with no recourse. Anyway, that's a whole lot of talking about me not liking it, but let's just break the game down as we go. First up, I've used a piece of music that's obviously not from the game here, and the reason for that is... well, the music for Booty makes me want to eat my own fingers. It is blippy, it is short, and it loops endlessly, forever reminding me that yes, I am playing Booty, and yes, I would like to turn the music off please, for the love of God! It's not a great start, admittedly, but once you get into Booty, the premise is actually quite lovely. It's a platform game of sorts, but unlike the absolutely fiendish design of Jet Set Willy, Booty takes on an almost puzzle platformer quality. Each room you enter has a number of keys, treasure, pirates, and doors. Each key is numbered and will open the respective door. You're tasked with collecting all of the pirates' treasure and not getting murdered. It's about as simple as that, really. On the face of it, it works perfectly well. There are doors built into the back of levels, and these lead you to new rooms. You may not be able to collect all the treasure in a room because the key you need is behind a locked door that you can't yet bypass. So the game requires a lot of exploration. It takes what could be a relatively small idea and it expands it into this big adventure without necessarily overwhelming the player with large open levels. Each room encapsulates a puzzle, and getting to the right starting position of that puzzle can, indeed, be a puzzle in itself. It's definitely one of the things that Booty should be commended for. Turn that bloody music off! So aside from the looping cacophony of noise that is the soundtrack, why do I bounce off this game now? It's not the idea behind the game, nor the type of game, nor is it really the music. It's through a number of design choices and quirks that just make me grind my teeth out. First, there's the main character sprite. Well, not really him as such, but the big bloody square that blocks out the scenery around him. 60% of the time, this isn't really an issue, but it does start to become an issue when you're attempting to pick up treasure. Why would that be an issue, I hear you cry? Well, firstly, if you're in a rush, let's say there's a murderous pirate marching down the corridor towards you, you'll perhaps want to quickly grab the treasure and run away. But it doesn't always work like that, because the game doesn't always register that you're close enough to the item to pick it up. In some cases, you can just touch the treasure ever so gently and lovely, you've picked up a treasure. But then sometimes you need to place your entire body over the treasure, walking right the way through it. Only then will it pick up the shiny fun things. And herein lies the issue. Because of this huge block around your gold hunting protagonist, it's impossible to see if you've picked up your mark or not until you've walked away from it. And when you're in a rush, because of the aforementioned homicidal maniacs, this becomes incredibly frustrating. But not as frustrating as bombs. Bombs ruined my day. The entire day. 3 times over. They are horrifically cruel to the point where you almost have to memorize the location of every single one if your reflexes aren't 100% on point. Bombs hide away in the treasure that you pick up and they'll detonate once armed, and they detonate quick. Too quick. There is literally no time to falter when a bomb has been ignited, which brings me back to my previous 2 issues. Your vision is obscured, and you're never sure if you're going to instantly pick up a pirate's coin purse, or if the game is going to make you walk over the entire thing. The actions required from the player in either of these 2 instances are vastly different. If you try to walk all the way over a bomb, but it ignites as soon as you touch the treasure, you're dead before you reach the other side. If, however, the treasure is glued to the floor until you stood right over it, then you pretty much need to keep walking in the same direction because changing directions is hazardous when you can't see what the hell you're doing. It's not just exploding gold that ruins your playthrough though. Many a time I found that the edges of platforms were obscured, leading to a fall to my death. Ladders couldn't be lined up with because I couldn't see where the bloody rungs started. All of these things lead to death, and death itself is compounded in frustration by the fact that Jim the cabin boy will be respawned back in the very first room every time. This is fine when you've barely gotten anywhere, but when you're 7 rooms deep in the laborious labyrinth of this cavernous pirate ship, starting from square one is tantamount to cruelty. Again? I have to make it all the way back there again? No. On my 3rd try, I decided to break the laws of gaming convention and use save states, 1 at the start of each level, partly to get more footage and partly because I just didn't feel like half of the deaths that occurred were even my fault. And I still became frustrated. I'd neutered the game down to a position where I couldn't really lose, and it was still pissing me off. Nostalgia is a weird thing. I remember Booty being a fantastic romp, and prior to replaying the game, that vision would have held true, but here I was staring frustration in the face. I loved the idea of Booty, but I didn't love the idea of playing Booty any further. That is, until I found out the game had been remade. Booty the Remake, as it's creatively known, was released in 2018, and where the John F. Cain original starts with a tune that drives my ears back inside my head, Sala Cantero's version is immediately less soul-scarring. This was a good sign, and on starting the game those signs became even brighter. Gone are the budget graphics, replaced with a somewhat busy but altogether more characterful take on the original game's design. Level layouts remain the same, but the movement itself has been rejigged. Jim the cabin boy no longer marches along, he sprints across the stage with ever-increasing acceleration, creating a game that both plays faster than the original and comes with its own hazards of movement that are intentional design choices, rather than issues with the sprite work. The difficulty has been moulded here into a game that feels altogether more accessible. Bombs don't explode in a fraction of a second, giving you time to leg it, but faltering can still lead to exploding your face off if you don't react quick enough. Fall damage has been neutered so you don't break both your ankles if you take a step off a platform higher than your knee. There are still dangers in Booty the Remake, some of them are even unfair. But lives have been increased up to a total of 9, and dying will see you respawn in the same room you were killed in, leaving you with far more room to explore each of Booty's levels. If Booty was a machine that had all the right moving parts when it was built, it has now rusted into a shuddering wreck over the passage of time. 2018's Booty is not the same machine, but it churns out the same product. Everything works as it should, and your fatal mistakes here will, for the most part, be solely in your hands. It's Booty, brought up to date and kept on its host hardware. It feels different, but everything has been balanced around this more accelerated control. It's easier to stop on ladders to avoid two pirates. It's easier to rush past treasure to avoid bombs. It's easier to get away from enemies. It's easier to move from platform to platform. It's easier to enjoy playing it. Because for all of the love I had for the original Booty, none of that was enough for me to see past the glaring flaws it has. But maybe you will. Maybe you've been playing the original Booty since launch and you simply don't see those flaws anymore. You've worked your way around them, practiced them, absorbed them into your gaming lexicon to the point where you are Jim the cabin boy and his big block of scenery obscuring frustration. If you are that person, I'm honestly jealous. It's not a nice feeling to come back to something you loved and realise that it just doesn't feel the same anymore. Not because the idea behind it is bad, but because the execution no longer feels right. Booty is a game that I'd never want to play again. Booty the Remake is a game that reminds me why I loved Booty in the first place. I will honestly say, if you've never played either, try both. Booty deserves that. And if you're a fan of the original, I can highly recommend the remake. I will never stop loving Booty. I just don't want to hang around with it anymore.